Russia moves in. 1,700 commandos sent to shield Ibrahim Traoré after coup attempt. Breaking news. Russia has officially deployed 1,700 elite commandos to protect Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, following an attempted military coup that shook the nation. In a bold geopolitical move, Vladimir Putin's Kremlin has stepped in to defend its key ally in West Africa, and the world is watching. Russia's military machine can mobilize 20,000 troops in a single day, a feat unmatched by most global powers. So, when 1,700 of its elite commandos landed in Burkina Faso to protect Captain Ibrahim Traoré after a chilling coup attempt, the world took notice. Was this a heroic rescue of a beleaguered leader, or a calculated move to tighten Moscow's grip on Africa? One question burns. What does this unprecedented deployment mean for Burkina Faso and the continent's future? In the volatile heart of West Africa, Burkina Faso's young leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, has become a lightning rod for hope, controversy, and danger. On April 15, 2025, the nation's capital, Ouagadougou, erupted into the global spotlight as Russia airlifted 1,700 elite commandos to shield Traoré from an alleged coup plot orchestrated by rogue ex-military officers and terrorist operatives, reportedly based in neighboring Ivory Coast. Traoré, who stormed to power in a 2022 coup at age 34, has navigated a treacherous landscape of jihadist insurgencies, economic hardship, and political enemies. This massive Russian intervention, swift, bold, and unprecedented, marks a turning point not only for Traoré's survival but for Burkina Faso's place in a high-stakes geopolitical chess game. As Moscow flexes its muscle in the Sahel, the world watches, wondering whether this is a lifeline for a revolutionary leader or a new chapter in Africa's scramble for influence. In this exclusive report, we break down why Russia is protecting Ibrahim Traoré, details of the failed coup attempt in Burkina Faso, the significance of deploying Russian special forces, what this means for Africa's rising leaders and Western influence, how this changes the game in the Sahel region, Russia's role in Burkina Faso and its regional implications, why Russia is protecting Ibrahim Traoré. Russia's protection of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's military leader since his 2022 coup, stems from strategic geopolitical and economic interests in the Sahel, a region increasingly pivotal in global power dynamics. Traoré, a 36-year-old populist, has aligned Burkina Faso with Moscow, pivoting away from traditional Western partners like France, as part of his anti-imperialist agenda. This alignment serves Russia's broader objectives in Africa. Countering Western influence, Russia seeks to displace Western, particularly French, influence in the Sahel, where anti-French sentiment is rife due to perceived neo-colonial exploitation. Traoré's expulsion of French forces in 2023 and his public criticism of France, calling it ungrateful for African contributions to its history, resonate with Russia's narrative of challenging Western hegemony. By protecting Traoré, Russia secures a key ally in a region where France's military and economic dominance is waning. Resource access. Burkina Faso's gold reserves, producing 52 tons annually, are a significant draw. Russia, facing Western sanctions post-Ukraine invasion, aims to secure access to African minerals to bolster its economy. Traoré's nationalization of gold mines and halt on unrefined gold exports to Europe align with Russia's interest in controlling resource flows, potentially through state-backed firms or proxies like the Africa Corps, formerly Wagner Group. Security partnerships. Traoré's government, grappling with jihadist insurgencies controlling 40 to 60% of Burkina Faso, relies on Russian military support. Since 2023, Russia has deployed hundreds of troops, initially Wagner mercenaries and later Africa Corps personnel, to train Burkinabe forces and protect key assets, including Traoré himself. This support strengthens Traoré's regime, which faces internal and external threats, while expanding Russia's military footprint. Ideological alignment. Traoré's anti-Western rhetoric and admiration for revolutionary figures like Thomas Sankara mirror Russia's portrayal as a partner for sovereign African states. Posts on X highlight Russia's commitment to shielding Traoré from NATO-backed threats, reflecting a shared narrative of resisting Western interference. Russia's non-interference in domestic governance, unlike Western demands for democracy, appeals to Traoré's junta. Russia's protection, however, is not altruistic. It ensures Traoré's dependence on Moscow, locking Burkina Faso into a cycle of military and economic reliance, similar to Russia's engagements in Mali and the Central African Republic.
Details of the failed coup attempt in Burkina Faso. On April 21, 2025, Burkina Faso's military junta announced it had thwarted a major plot to overthrow Traoré, planned for April 16, 2025. The coup attempt, detailed by Security Minister Mahamadou Sanaa, aimed to sow total chaos through an assault on the presidency and coordinated terrorist attacks. Plot overview. The conspiracy involved current and former Burkinabe soldiers, allegedly based in Ivory Coast, collaborating with terrorist groups like Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, JNIM. The plan included recruiting soldiers to attack the presidential palace, leveraging religious and traditional leaders to sway military loyalty, and escalating jihadist attacks to incite a revolt. The goal was to place Burkina Faso under an international organization's oversight, implying Western influence. Key actors. The junta accused 2 exiled former army officers in Ivory Coast of masterminding the plot, though names were not disclosed publicly. Arrests included military personnel, such as Frederick Ouedraogo, former Military Justice Battalion commander, and Captain Élisée Tassambido, Northern Sector commander. Others remain at large. Intelligence and thwarting. The plot was uncovered through intercepted communications between a Burkinabe officer and terrorist leaders, revealing details of military positions and operations. The junta's intelligence services, likely bolstered by Russian advisors, acted swiftly, arresting several plotters and increasing security around Ouagadougou, including at the General Baba Sai military camp. Context and aftermath. Tensions surged post-coup attempt, with military camps under heavy surveillance and public demonstrations on April 30th condemning Western interference. The junta accused Ivory Coast, a French ally, of harboring plotters, escalating regional friction. Pro-Traore rallies, waving Russian flags, underscored public support, though censorship limits dissent visibility. This was not the first coup attempt against Traore. Previous plots in September 2023, January 2024, and September 2024, some linked to ousted leader Paul-Henri Damiba, highlight persistent instability, fueled by military discontent and external meddling. The significance of deploying Russian special forces. Russia's deployment of special forces to Burkina Faso, reported in 2023 and 2025, marks a deepening of its military engagement in the Sahel. These forces, initially Wagner mercenaries and later Africa Corps personnel under Russian military intelligence, GRU, play a multifaceted role with significant implications. Presidential security. Russian special forces, described as military specialists on X, have been tasked with protecting Traore and the presidency since a September 2023 coup attempt exposed vulnerabilities. A small team, reportedly led by Traore's brother Inoussa, integrates Russian personnel into palace security, reflecting distrust in local forces. This ensures Traore's survival, critical for Russia's regional strategy. Counterinsurgency support. The deployment, starting with 100 troops in January 2024 and expanding to 300, aims to bolster Burkina Faso's fight against jihadist groups like JNIM and Islamic State. Russian forces provide training, advanced weaponry, and tactical support, though their effectiveness is questionable, as violence has surged, with deaths tripling since 2022 to geopolitical signal. The visible arrival of Russian troops, documented by satellite imagery of an Ilyushin IL-76 landing in Ouagadougou, signals Moscow's commitment to Burkina Faso as a laboratory for post-Wagner influence. Unlike France's conditional aid, Russia's support comes with fewer governance demands, appealing to junta-led states. Regional precedent. The deployment sets a model for Russian security partnerships in the Sahel, following Mali's engagement with Wagner. It challenges Western military presence, as seen in the U.S. withdrawal from Niger in 2024, and strengthens the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, comprising Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. However, Russian forces face criticism for human rights abuses, as seen in Mali, and their limited success against insurgents raises doubts about long-term efficacy. Their presence also risks entrenching Traore's authoritarianism, with reports of forced conscription and media censorship. What this means for Africa's rising leaders and Western influence. Traore's alliance with Russia and survival of coup attempts have broader implications for Africa's emerging leaders and Western influence, particularly in coup-prone, resource-rich regions. Emboldening young leaders, Traore, at 36, represents a new generation of African leaders, charismatic, anti-Western, and inspired by figures like Sankara. His popularity, evident at regional events like Ghana's 2025 inauguration, inspires similar figures in Mali, Assimi Goïta, and Niger, Abdourahmane Tiani. These leaders prioritize sovereignty and resource control, challenging Western-backed elites. Afrobarometer surveys show 66% of Burkinabe support military rule, signaling tolerance for such regimes among youth. Erosion of Western influence. Russia's backing of Traore accelerates the decline of French and U.S. influence in the Sahel. France's military exit from Burkina Faso, 2023, and Niger, 2024, coupled with ECOWAS's diminished authority after the AES formation, weakens Western leverage. U.S. criticism of Traore, like General Michael Langley's 2025 remarks on gold reserves, fuels anti-Western sentiment, as seen in Ouagadougou rallies. Alternative partnerships, Russia's model, military aid without democratic conditions, appeals to junta-led states. China and Turkey also gain traction, offering economic and military support. This diversification reduces reliance on Western institutions like the IMF, which Traore rejected, though it risks new dependencies. Risks for leaders. While Traore's survival emboldens others, it underscores vulnerabilities. Coup attempts, internal military dissent, and jihadist threats persist. Leaders emulating Traore must navigate Russia's self-interest, which prioritizes resource access over local stability, potentially alienating populations if promises falter. Western powers face a dilemma. Doubling down on sanctions or engagement risks further alienation, while withdrawal seeds ground to Russia and China. Rebuilding influence requires addressing African grievances over neo-colonialism and offering tangible economic benefits.
How this changes the game in the Sahel region. Russia's protection of Traore and the AES's rise fundamentally alter the Sahel's political, security, and economic landscape, with ripple effects across Africa and beyond. Security dynamics. The AES, formed in 2023 by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, prioritizes collective defense against jihadists and external threats, backed by Russian support. However, security has deteriorated, with 2025 marking the deadliest year for militant violence, exacerbated by Russian forces' limited counterinsurgency success and alleged abuses. The AES's exit from ECOWAS weakens regional cooperation, isolating the trio from West African frameworks. Geopolitical realignment. The Sahel is now a battleground for great power competition. Russia's foothold, cemented by deployments and resource deals, challenges U.S. and French interests. China's growing investments in mining and infrastructure further dilute Western dominance. Tensions with pro-Western neighbors like Ivory Coast, accused of coup plotting, heighten regional fragmentation. Economic shifts. Traore's nationalization and gold refinery, 150 tons annually, aim to retain wealth locally, inspiring similar moves in Mali and Niger. This disrupts global commodity chains, as Europe loses access to Sahel minerals. Russia and China may fill the gap, but inefficiencies in state-run enterprises risk economic stagnation. Social and political trends. The AES's anti-Western stance and Traore's popularity fuel resource nationalism and military rule tolerance. However, human rights abuses, censorship, and unfulfilled promises, like Traore's delayed 2024 elections, could spark backlash. The Sahel's youth, while supportive, demand tangible progress, and failure risks unrest. The Sahel's shift toward Russia and the AES marks a new era of sovereignty-focused, authoritarian governance, challenging Western models. Yet, persistent insecurity and economic hurdles threaten stability, making the region a volatile testing ground for Africa's future. Presentation of problem/challenge. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's leadership has been a high-wire act since he ousted Burkina Faso's previous junta in September 2022, promising to restore security and sovereignty. At 37, he remains Africa's youngest head of state, a charismatic figure who inspires fervent loyalty among supporters for his anti-imperialist rhetoric and bold reforms. Yet, his rule is under siege. Jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS control nearly 50% of Burkina Faso's territory, displacing over 2 million people and killing thousands. Economic woes, compounded by sanctions from Western powers after Traoré expelled French troops in 2023, have fueled discontent. The most immediate threat emerged in April 2025, when Burkina Faso's intelligence services uncovered a sophisticated plot to overthrow Traoré. The scheme, allegedly masterminded by disgruntled ex-army officers and terrorist leaders sheltered in Ivory Coast, aimed to storm the presidential palace, assassinate Traoré, and install a puppet regime. The plot's audacity exposed Traoré's vulnerabilities. His military, underfunded and overstretched, struggled to counter both insurgents and internal dissent. Relations with Western allies, particularly France and the US, had soured, leaving him diplomatically isolated. The coup threat demanded a rapid, decisive response, but Burkina Faso's limited resources and fractured security apparatus were no match for the crisis. With Traoré's life and regime on the line, the stage was set for an extraordinary intervention, one that would come not from the West, but from Russia, a rising power in Africa's geopolitical arena. Exploration/development. The 1,700 commandos deployed to Burkina Faso are no ordinary troops. They comprise elite units from Russia's Spetsnaz, Special Forces, and the Africa Corps, a rebranded successor to the Wagner Group, known for its ruthless efficiency in African conflicts. Spetsnaz operatives are among the world's most formidable soldiers, trained in grueling conditions to master close-quarters combat, counter-terrorism, and high-risk extractions. Their training includes survival in extreme environments, advanced marksmanship, and psychological warfare, making them ideal for protecting a high-value target like Traore. The Africa Corps, meanwhile, brings battle-hardened experience from operations in Mali, Libya, and the Central African Republic, where they secured regimes and resource deals for Moscow. Equipped with cutting-edge technology, Prasuka electronic warfare systems, Orlan, 10 drones, and encrypted satellite communications, these forces form an impenetrable shield. Russia's decision to deploy such a force reflects calculated geopolitical ambitions. Burkina Faso, with its vast gold reserves and strategic position in the Sahel, is a prize in the contest for African influence. Since Traore pivoted toward Moscow, expelling French forces and signing security pacts with Russia, the Kremlin has viewed him as a key ally in its anti-Western campaign. Russian military instructors were already training Burkinabe troops before the coup attempt, and gold mining concessions have reportedly been granted to Russian firms. This deployment cements that partnership, positioning Russia to counter French and American influence in the region while securing access to Burkina Faso's resources. However, the move is not without risks. Traore's accusations against Ivory Coast, a Western-aligned neighbor, threaten to inflame regional tensions, potentially drawing ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, into the fray. Domestically, Traore's reliance on Russian forces could alienate segments of the population wary of foreign intervention, especially given Moscow's controversial track record in Africa. For Russia, the operation is a high-stakes gamble. Success could solidify its Sahel foothold, but failure, or a misstep by the Commandos, could tarnish its image and embolden rivals. The deployment underscores the delicate balance Traore must strike between survival and sovereignty, as he leans on a powerful but self-interested ally.
Climax/key moment. The operation reached its peak in the pre-dawn hours of April 16, 2025, when a fleet of Russian Il-76 transport planes roared into Ouagadougou's military airport, disgorging 1,700 commandos under a starlit sky. Clad in black tactical gear and moving with surgical precision, the forces fanned out across the capital, securing the presidential palace, Traore's residence, and key infrastructure like the national radio station and airport. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning for threats, while Spetsnaz snipers took positions on rooftops. Posts on X capture the moment, with users describing Russian troops locking down Ouagadougou like a fortress and sharing grainy videos of armored vehicles patrolling the streets. The commandos' arrival galvanized Traore's supporters. Hours later, a massive rally filled Ouagadougou's central square, where thousands brandished Russian and Burkinabe flags, chanting "Vive Traore" and denouncing Western meddling. For Traore, the moment was a reprieve, ensuring his immediate safety and sending a clear message to coup plotters: any move against him would face Russia's wrath. Yet, it also marked a point of no return. By accepting such a visible foreign presence, Traore tied his fate to Moscow, risking perceptions of him as a Kremlin puppet. The stakes were colossal. The commando's success could stabilize his regime, but any miscalculation could spark backlash, regionally or domestically, with consequences for Burkina Faso's fragile unity. Conclusion/summary. Russia's deployment of 1,700 commandos to protect Ibrahim Traoré is a seismic event with far-reaching implications. In the short term, it neutralizes the coup threat, fortifying Traoré's hold on power and giving him breathing room to address Burkina Faso's myriad challenges: jihadist insurgencies, economic instability, and political division. The operation showcases Russia's military prowess and its willingness to back African allies decisively, reinforcing its image as a counterweight to Western influence. For Traoré, the commandos are a lifeline, but they come at a cost: deeper dependence on Moscow, potential friction with neighbors like Ivory Coast, and the risk of alienating Burkinabe citizens wary of foreign troops. Regionally, the intervention could reshape the Sahel's power dynamics. It strengthens the Russia-aligned axis of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, challenging ECOWAS and Western-backed states. It may also embolden other juntas to seek Russian support, escalating proxy rivalries in Africa. Globally, it underscores Moscow's ambition to project power far from its borders, even as it navigates its own domestic and international pressures. For Burkina Faso, The future hinges on Traoré's ability to leverage Russian protection while maintaining legitimacy at home. Whether this bold move stabilizes the nation or sows new conflicts remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: Russia's commandos have redrawn the lines of power in the Sahel, with Traoré at the center of the storm. Call to action, CTA. Russia's move to shield Ibrahim Traoré with 1,700 commandos is a geopolitical bombshell. What's your take? Is Moscow saving a leader under siege, or tightening its grip on Africa's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's debate the consequences of this high-stakes play. Want more on global military moves and the forces shaping our world? Check out our other videos, from covert operations to superpower showdowns in the Sahel. Subscribe, hit the bell, and join our community to stay ahead of the curve. Share this story to spark the conversation, because understanding these moments defines how we navigate tomorrow.